And when that company that is telling you, you have to do this or I'm going to fire you, ask yourself, how much do they really care about you? So why should you care about them? Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, and especially for those of you that are new here, this video is what I like to call the meat and potatoes of the last live stream, because I condensed the live stream down to the meat and potatoes for those of you who do not have the time to dedicate an hour or more to a conversation. So if you were present during yesterday's live stream, this is just a portion of the live stream that captures the message that I intended to put out. Enjoy and God bless. When I joined the Army, I was about 19 years old, right? I joined the Army, which was a blessing because that's where I met Mrs. Alaska Prepper. I met Mrs. Alaska Prepper in the Army when I was about 19, and I was in the not in the Army, the Navy, all right? My first life in the military was in the Navy first. I spent 4 years in the Navy. However, I loved my job. I loved being in the Navy. I was very, very good at my job in the Navy. I went in as an E1, and in 3 years, I was promoted all the way up to the rank of E5, which in the Navy is Petty Officer Second Class, which is a pretty good accomplishment, right? And I was promoted every time, first time up. And one of those promotions was a meritorious promotion, meaning that I didn't have to test for the promotion like they do in the Navy. I was meritoriously promoted due to my performance. But meaning I loved that job. I did a really good job. I worked very hard. A couple of years after I met my wife in the Navy, we got married. And about a year and a half or a year and a few months after that, I think it was about a year and 4 months after we got married, Victor was born. And then just a few months later, re-enlistment time came up. My wife and I talked. My wife really did not want to raise a family going from base to base. I understood that, so we decided to get out. She was in the Navy as well. So we decided to get out. We moved to Michigan, and I ended up working. Actually, we both ended up working for Yo Plate Yogurt. You know, when you go get that yogurt, Yo Plate, they have a big plant in Michigan. That's a Yo Plate Yogurt plant. I worked there for about a year. Didn't really like that job very much, but I worked my butt off. We both worked our butts off. And then about a year after I started that job, I ended up getting a job somewhere else at a dairy manufacturing plant. And the name of that plant, which is no longer there because it closed down several years ago, but the name of that plant was Dean Foods. And in that plant, we processed milk. You know, we loaded out to all of the supermarkets in all of Michigan, pretty much, that purchased that milk. Myers, their gas stations, and all of the local small supermarkets that were in the area. And I didn't really love that job, but I did really well in that job. I worked my butt off in that job. And about a year and a half, 2 years after I started working there, I had worked myself up to a middle management position. So I was like a foreman, and I ended up working there for about 11 years. But point being is that I worked there for about 11 years, and I really didn't like that job, but I did the best job that I could. And I did really well. And one day, I forgot what happened. I decided that I didn't want to work there anymore. I just did not see myself working there until I retired, which in a way, everything works out for a reason, because like I said, that plant ended up closing down and everyone that was there lost their job. And I came up with a plan. I told my wife, hey, why don't I join the Army? And she looked at me like I was crazy. So it took a little bit of convincing. At that time, Victor was only about, I don't know, 8, 10 years old, maybe, something like that. I don't remember exactly. And I told her, I said, listen, in a few years, you know, Victor will be off to college. We'll be free. We'll be able to go to Germany. We'll be able to go to Italy, Spain, anywhere that the Army will send us. We'll be able to go on the Army's dime, and we'll be able to travel the world, and it'll be you and me. And she decided, okay. So I joined the Army. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, 2 weeks after I was in basic training, I call home for the first time, and my wife disclosed to me during that conversation that little Miss Alaska Prepper was in her belly. So everything happens for a reason, and blessings happen for a reason as well. And that indeed is a blessing in itself. But anyways, I joined the Army, and when I joined, since I had previous military in the background, I went in as an E4, right? I got out of the Navy as an E5, but I went into the Army as an E4. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when I was in the Army, from the day that I was there, from the first day in basic training to my very last day, I worked my butt off. I never took anything for granted. I earned every single penny that I was paid while I was working in the Army. And it didn't matter what rank I was. I worked just as hard no matter what rank I was. I gave all of my dedication to the Army, always leaving my family in the back burner. Why? Because I was a soldier. You know, I was responsible for people's lives. When I first started out in the Army, I started out in a combat arms job. I was a forward observer. And for those of you that don't know what that is, a forward observer is the soldier on the field that calls back and says, hey, send me some bombs, you know, or talks to a helicopter and, either an Apache or today is AH-64 attack helicopters, and say, hey, I need you to send some, missiles over here. Or we could talk to an A-10 and have them buzz an area. Anyways, it was my job. I took it very, very seriously, because if I made a mistake, I knew that it could cost the lives of people. And when I went up in rank, I got promoted to sergeant my very first time. And then I got promoted to staff sergeant my very first. Every promotion I had in the Army was the first time. I was a first time go in every promotion. And that was a testament of how hard I worked and how seriously and how dedicated I was to my job and to my soldiers. And I was extremely, extremely hard on my soldiers, because I knew that if they messed up, it could cost someone their lives. But the point being here is that my dedication was to my job. My dedication was to the Army. Everything I did was for the Army. After my first tour to Afghanistan, I had to switch MOSs, military occupational specialty, because I got hurt and I had to switch or get out. So I ended up switching, and I became a finance soldier, where I had to do a complete 180, because I had to turn from the angry sergeant to the understanding sergeant, for good reason. Because in combat arms, if you make a mistake, someone can die. In finance, if you make a mistake, someone's pay gets messed up, and you can always fix that, right? So I had to do a complete 180. But my dedication to my job, my dedication to the Army was steadfast. I worked my tail off. Eventually, when I got promoted to Sergeant First Class, I was transferred to the 1st Special Forces Group Airborne in Fort Lewis, Washington. And I had a small office, about 6 soldiers or so, that I was in command of. All right. It was about 6 soldiers under me that I was responsible for. And then I had a major who was my officer in charge. And ladies and gentlemen, we worked our butts off. I worked their butts off, not only in the office, but in PT. We worked hard, and I gave all of my dedication and most of my time to that job. And then eventually I left that job, and I was transferred to a finance unit, where I became a detachment sergeant, which is kind of like a platoon sergeant, right? It's a sergeant that's in a position where you have about a platoon size element under you of soldiers. And my job as a detachment sergeant was to make sure that my soldiers' morale, their welfare, their well-being was taken care of, that their training was taken care of, that they were in the best position possible to get promoted. And I took my job very seriously, and I worked very hard. When I got to my first finance unit, about the first 6 or 7 months, I worked every single day. I would go to work at 5 in the morning, because I always hit the gym before PT, and I wouldn't be home till about 8:30 at night. And on Saturdays, I'd go in at about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would work till about noon, at which time usually my wife and my daughter, because Victor wasn't there, my wife and my daughter would come and meet me on base, and we'd go out to eat lunch, and then we'd go to the commissary and do a little bit of shopping for groceries, and we'd go back home and spend the rest of the day together. And then on Sunday mornings, I'd usually be there around 4 or 5 in the morning. And I'd stay there till about noon. And then I'd go home and spend the rest of my day with my family. I did that for about 6 or 7 months. Why? Because I was dedicated to my job. Because I was a soldier. Because I needed to do my very best to take care of my soldiers and to take care of my responsibilities in the Army. And we're getting to the end of the story. It's not going to take as long as I thought. During my last deployment, my wife had to have a major operation. And I was in Afghanistan. And my commander knew about it. Everyone knew about it. You know, my commander did, that I was with, my captain, and my major and my first sergeant back in the rear. They all knew about it. And I called my wife, and she told me that the doctor told her to give her my information so that she could draft a Red Cross letter to send to my commander overseas in Afghanistan so that I can come home. Because the operation that she was having, she was going to need help. And my wife refused. She said, his soldiers need him. So we get back from Afghanistan, we get back to work. And I was just as busy when I got back from Afghanistan as I was previously. And I was just as dedicated. And I was putting in just as many hours. I think I clocked in like 80, 90 hours a week. And I remember one day, this is where my awakening came. And I'm going to tell you why I'm telling you all of this here in a minute. This is where my awakening came. I was at what is called command and staff. When you're in the military, or at least in the Army, they have what's called command and staff. Usually once a week, all of the detachment sergeants and the first sergeants and their commanders and the unit commander, the major, they get together and they go over things that need to be done, schedules, all that kind of stuff. I was at a command and staff, and I had my little green assistant with me. And that's that little green book. If any one of you that's been in the military, you know what that little green book is. It's called your assistant, right? It's where you write everything down. I had my little green book with me, and I was writing down things that needed to be done. This was on a Wednesday. It was on a Wednesday. And I was writing down things that needed to be done, and I would always put a little box in front of it. That way, when I completed it, I can check off the box. And by the time that we left there was probably about a dozen things that needed to be done before the end of that week. Now, granted, remember, this was Wednesday. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I said, okay, it's a lot of work, but it needs to get done. So after that command and staff meeting was over, I'm walking out. And my first sergeant, he pulls me over and says, hey, I'm going to need you to go ahead and run a range. Be a range safety officer on Friday. And I'm like, okay. And a range safety officer is when the soldiers go to the range to qualify, with their M4s, and to make sure that they're still up to date on their qualifications and all that stuff, right? So you have a safety officer there making sure that everyone's doing everything by the book so nobody gets hurt. And I said, okay. I said, but let me tell you something, First Sergeant. I said, you tell me what you want me to do. I said, do you want me to do all of this stuff? And I showed him everything that I had written down that he just had assigned us to do. I said, you want me to do all, because when you do a range, there's a lot of pre-work. There's a lot of things that you have to do before it actually takes place. It takes a lot of time. So I asked him, I says, this is all the stuff you told us we have to get done by the end of this week. I said, and you want me to do a range? I said, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I said, but you're going to have to pick. You're going to have to pick either me doing all of the stuff that you want done by the end of the week or me doing the range. I said, you have to pick one or the other. I said, because I'm done. And he looked at me with a crazy eye looks, right? And let me tell you what, my old first sergeant that I had during that time, great guy. Loved that guy, right? But I told him, and one of the reasons why I loved him is because he allowed me to speak to him like we were men to men. Not that he was up here and I was down here, but that we were men to men. I love that guy. So he looked at me with the crazy eyes, and I said, I'm done, First Sergeant. I said, I'm done. I said, I am done putting my family in the back burner. I am done promising my daughter that I'm going to go tuck her in and not be able to. I said, I'm done. I said, so you pick what you want me to do. I said, I will give you my best, but I will no longer give you my life. I said, I will be here 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. I will never come in on a weekend again unless I am ordered to do so. I said, but from 5 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night, I will give you 100%, 100%. And you can always count on me. I said, I will no longer give my life to the Army. And his reply to me was, and you could just imagine this, a junior NCO. Well, I wasn't a junior NCO. I was a sergeant first class, but I was junior to him, to his rank. You could just imagine his face. He was looking at me like in disbelief. And I said, I will no longer give my life to the Army. I said, when I'm done here in the Army is done with me. But when I hang up my boots, will I still have a family to go home to if I continue to give my life to the Army? I said, I won't do it anymore. And I didn't. I never did it again. I stuck to my guns and I started doing things for myself and my family more so than the Army, because I felt that I had given the Army so much, and their reply to my sacrifice was to ask more and more and more. It was never enough. And what I'm getting to is this, ladies and gentlemen. Your job does not define who you are. If you allow your job to define who you are, you will not only lose yourself, but you will lose your family. And let me tell you why I'm saying this. Because right now in this country and in a lot of other countries, people are having to decide whether they're going to keep a job that will change who they are. They're having to decide whether this is more important than they are. Whether money and a title is more important than who they are and what their life means. I watched a video the other day of a fellow YouTuber, and to me it seemed like he was very sad because he gave up his profession in order to stay who he is. But I say no. I say rejoice. I say be happy that you were able to tell the man, you can keep it, but I'm going to keep who I am. You're not going to threaten me with a job so that I can change who I am for you. Because, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what. Ever since I got out of the Army, I don't get a phone call from anyone in the Army saying, hey, happy birthday, AP, on my birthday. I don't get a phone call from anyone that was in a position of authority from the Army. My certificate of retirement has the signature of the President of the United States. I don't get a phone call from him saying, hey, how are you doing? How's your family doing? Why, ladies and gentlemen? Because although there is a lot of merit in serving your country, there is more merit in serving yourself and your family. One day you will have to answer to yourself, what did I do? And if that answer is, I sold out so that I can keep a job, then it is you that will have to live with that. No one else. And when that company that is telling you, you have to do this or I'm going to fire you, ask yourself, how much do they really care about you? So why should you care about them? Money is money, ladies and gentlemen. You can make money anywhere. And although you may have a job that you love, you can do that job anywhere without being held hostage to your beliefs. We are being tested as humanity. We are being tested by a power that is trying to change who we are because they think that they hold something over us. And the only way that they hold something over you is if you put more value on a job than you do in who you are and in your family. So don't give up being who you are for a paycheck. I know, AP, it's easy for you to say you're collecting a retirement, you make money on YouTube, all this stuff. It's easy for you to say, ladies and gentlemen, it took me a long time to learn, and it took me a long time to learn it the hard way. I gave decades of my life to the system only to realize that that system did not care about me. Only to realize that that system could care less whether my family was with me after they were done with me. They didn't care. I remember one day I was at my first sergeant's office, and it was about 7:30 at night. And we were going over NCOERs, right? Evaluations that I had to write for my NCOs under me. And I remember that previous day promising my daughter that I would be home that night to tuck her in. And here I am, 7:30 at night. I'm sitting in my first sergeant's office, and every 5 minutes he's taking a phone call. And at about 7:45, I got up, I took all of my paperwork, and I said, I got to go. And he gave me that crazy eye look again. And he said, what do you mean we're not done? I said, I have to go. I said, I told my daughter that I was going to be home tonight to tuck her in, and I will. I said, we can finish this tomorrow. Trust me, it'll still be here tomorrow. And I just walked out. What is important to you? Is it important to you that you can look at yourself in the mirror? Is it important to you that you can value yourself enough to not be condemned by someone else just because they hold a paycheck over your head? Is it important to you to be able to look at your family and be the man or the woman that they think you are? It's up to you. But like I said, it took me a very long time to realize that. And the day that I realized that, everything changed. I started making a plan for myself and my family. I started making a plan that I wanted to be free because I was not going to allow this system to steal my youth and not allow me to be a father to my children, because I was always at work trying to make that next dollar. So to those of you that find yourselves at a crossroads, trying to decide, what should I do? Ask yourselves and look at yourselves in the mirror and ask yourselves, do you want to belong to you, or do you want to belong to a system that doesn't care about you? In the end, good will always prevail over evil. In the end, those people that think that they can own us and think that they can manipulate us into doing what they want us to do with our lives, they will not be the victors, ladies and gentlemen. But nothing good ever comes easy. Nothing good ever comes easy, or else why is it good? You finishing that marathon takes a lot of practice. You have to run hundreds of miles to practice just to be able to run 26 miles. And all of that running, all of that practice, all of that suffering, even the suffering that you do during the marathon, when you finish it, that is when you feel the good. And everything that you did and all of the sacrifices that you made, that is when you feel the good. Nothing good ever comes easy. And that's how it's going to be now, and that's how it's always been. So if you want the easy way out, then learn to live with the consequences that that easy road will hand you when the end is near. Because we all have an end. The question is, what road did you take to get to your destination? Did you take the road that was just? Did you take the road that was right? Or did you take the easy road that stripped you and your family of who you are? There is going to be suffering. But how will we be as humanity once we get to the other side? How? What will we be? Who will we be if we don't stay true to ourselves?